Finally, the incompetence leaves the room as Mike, who has settled in as the acting CEO, continues to mock me. His entourage of employees also look down on me, smirking with smug satisfaction. If I leave, all of the CEO's favorites will be fired. It's an unspoken truth that everyone knows. Mike's sister, the executive vice president Alice, bites her lip in frustration. What are you thinking? If Jack leaves, the company won't be able to function, she says. Shut up, Mike snaps back. I'm the acting CEO, and you're the EVP. If you can't listen to me, then you should resign too. The CEO's wife, Linda, is completely on Mike's side. If I resign, Mike will take over the company, and I'll have no power to stop it. Watching the internal strife in this family-run business is painfully distressing. I might as well resign. Thank you for everything up till now, I say, bowing my head deeply. As I raise my head, I see that Mike, Linda, and the other employees have turned pale. Turning around, I'm astonished by the scene unfolding behind me. My name is Jack, and I'm a 32-year-old salesman working for a mid-sized design company, Harrison Design. The company is family-run, with the upper management all bearing the last name Harrison. The CEO, Mr. Harrison, his son Mike as the executive vice president, and his daughter Alice as the managing director run the company. The CEO's wife, Linda, doesn't hold an official position, but she often visits the office to complain about the employees. I've heard that family-run businesses can be tough workplaces, and indeed Linda, who wanders around the office without doing any actual work, can be annoying at times. However, as long as I ignore her complaints, it's a pretty good place to work. The primary reason is that Mr. Harrison, the CEO, is a very respectable person. He never throws his CEO status around and always considers the employees' opinions, which is why our company has a good atmosphere. The employees work comfortably without harboring any grievances. Mr. Harrison's children joined the company's leadership about 5 years ago. His eldest daughter, Alice, is a year older than his son, Mike. But despite her experience and capability, Alice is just the managing director, while Mike is the executive vice president. Alice doesn't really complain about this, though. A graduate from a renowned university, Alice is extremely capable and never brags about it. She puts the employees' comfort first, making her the kind of supervisor you'd willingly follow. On the other hand, Mike, who became the executive vice president, is somewhat problematic. Before joining his father's company, Mike traveled the world as a backpacker, while Alice gained experience at another design office. There's nothing wrong with world travel, but Mike seems unable to shake off his student mentality and doesn't like hearing anything unpleasant. Perhaps our company still clings to a male-dominated society. Given Mike's promotion despite being younger, Linda's influence is a major factor in Mike's rise. She dotes on him and seems to indulge all his whims. Yet, as the son of the respectable Mr. Harrison, I thought Mike might change as he gained experience. I thought I was still young, but it's been 10 years since I graduated college. During that time, I've worked solely for Harrison Design. As more young people join, I feel my age creeping up on me. I try my best not to become an unpleasant supervisor. Additionally, I have a unique connection with Mr. Harrison. He enjoys playing chess, but few people in the office can match him. While others play pool or checkers, I'm one of the few who can play chess, so we often play in his office during lunch breaks or after work. We don't hold back, and our win rates are about even. Well, I lost today. Maybe I'm getting old, says Mr. Harrison. What are you talking about, Mr. Harrison? We still need you to keep going strong. Mr. Harrison, who recently turned 60, has started to worry about his age. From my perspective, he's still plenty young, vibrant, and the perfect example of a 60-year-old professional. But it seems his concern about his age stems from the fact that his son Mike is still not capable enough to be confidently left in charge. Leaving with a loss doesn't feel satisfying. How about one more game, Jack? He asks. Sure, but I won't go easy on you, I reply. Mr. Harrison laughs heartily, and we begin setting up the chess pieces again. Then, one day, something terrible happened. A female employee rushed out of the CEO's office in a panic. Somebody call an ambulance. Mr. Harrison collapsed right after he said he's having chest pains. We employees hurried towards the CEO's office and found the door open, with several employees already crowded inside. I could hear the loud voices of Mike and Alice. Dad, hang in there. I'm loosening your tie now. You'll be okay, just don't move. The ambulance is on its way. The paramedics arrived quickly and took Mr. Harrison away on a stretcher, accompanied by Mike and Alice. Linda, who was at home, was informed and said she would head straight to the hospital. Meanwhile, those of us at the office couldn't focus on work, anxiously waiting for news from Mike and Alice. Soon, Alice called the company. Dad's completely unconscious now. He's in critical condition with arrhythmia and a high fever, she said. From that day, a wave of unease spread throughout the office. While we tried to keep working, everyone was whispering about the future of Harrison Design. If Mr. Harrison doesn't make it, will we all lose our jobs? No, the executive vice president and managing director are still here. One of them will take over. But that's where the significant issue lay. I thought things might work out if Alice became the CEO. But I was only anxious about the future if Mike took the position. There were several family meetings at the Harrison household, and ultimately, my worst fears were confirmed. Mike, as the eldest son, was appointed the acting CEO. This is what I think is the downside of family-run businesses. But it's not as if the employees had a say in who would become the acting CEO. The next day, Mike arrived at the office, embracing his new role with unwarranted confidence. During the morning assembly, Alice, the managing director, addressed the staff, her voice steady but her expression strained. Mr. Harrison is still unconscious. Harrison Design is facing its biggest crisis since its founding. Let's rally behind the acting CEO and get through this together. As I listened to Alice's words, I found myself lost in thought. Is this really okay for Alice? Is she truly satisfied with this? Now, a few words from the acting CEO, Alice prompted, stepping aside for Mike. I know everyone is anxious in a time like this, but I need you to trust me and give it your all. If we work hard together, I'm sure my father's condition will improve, Mike said, his voice filled with a confidence that felt forced. One of Mike's supporters began clapping, and soon the rest of the employees joined in, their applause half-hearted but necessary. I too clapped while intently watching Alice. She joined in as well, but her smile was cold, as if she were holding back her true feelings. A colleague standing next to me muttered softly, "What's going to happen now? I'm really worried." It was clear I wasn't the only one feeling uneasy. A few days had passed since Mike assumed the role of acting CEO, and the effects were already being felt. He had begun implementing major layoffs, targeting anyone he considered a nuisance. It had been 5 years since Mike joined Harrison Design, and there were quite a few employees who were dissatisfied with him. Unfortunately, I was one of them. It seemed clear that Mike was determined to eliminate those who had ever opposed him. Before the layoffs started, Linda had begun frequenting the CEO's office. Whatever they discussed didn't bode well for the employees. Someone should take some tea to the CEO's office and check out the situation, a female employee suggested. A colleague quickly prepared tea and knocked on the CEO's office door. We all held our breath, straining to hear anything that might give us a clue. When she returned, she was visibly shaken. It looks like layoffs are definitely happening. Anyone who doesn't align with the acting CEO's views is out. That means those who opposed Mike in the past are definitely targets. What should we do? Another colleague whispered. I've been pretty outspoken. If that's the case, I'm in a similar boat, I replied. Ever since Mike and Alice joined the company, it was clear who sided with Mike and who supported Alice. I had firmly supported Alice, which now put me in a precarious position. Then 2 of Mike's supporters entered the room, and the conversation stopped abruptly. What's this, a funeral? It's so quiet in here. We need to support Harrison Design under the acting CEO now. Who knows how many of you will remain? Just you wait and see. One of them sneered before exchanging a glance with the other, both bursting into loud laughter. Their future with the company seemed secure, while the rest of us were left to wonder how much longer we would last. The layoffs began the next day. First to go were those who had openly opposed Mike's methods. Then even those who had never voiced opposition but were known to side with Alice were targeted. Alice became increasingly isolated, with Mike driving her out of the company despite their sibling relationship and shared blood. Eventually, I was the only one left still supporting Alice. I could see the frustration in her eyes, and she finally confided in me. My mother always favored Mike, Alice said bitterly. I've always been the one to oppose her, so I guess I'm not the favorite. Is the acting CEO Mike regularly visiting Mr. Harrison at the hospital? I asked. Alice shook her head weakly. He's left it all to the hospital staff. He seems to think there's no hope for a recovery. Mike is going to take over Harrison Design for good. Alice, are you visiting Mr. Harrison at the hospital? How is his condition? There's been a significant change, actually a good one. But Mike's actions have been so swift. I'm not sure if it's going to be in time, she replied, a glimmer of hope in her voice. The fact that she mentioned in time suggested there might still be a chance for Mr. Harrison's return to the company. I felt a spark of hope in the darkness. Alice, next time you visit Mr. Harrison, please take me with you. I might not be able to make much difference, but I want to help in any way I can for his recovery. Thank you. I haven't been to visit in the last few days. Let's go right after work today, she agreed. Just then, one of Mike's supporters approached me and directed me to the CEO's office. Alice's face tightened up. It looked like my time had come to be let go. I bowed deeply to her. It's finally time. It's hard to leave you behind, but I guess I have to face him now, I said. I'm coming with you. I can't stand this outrage, Alice declared. We both entered the CEO's office. Mike sat in a high-backed luxury chair, one of his supporters standing to his right, while Linda, looking pleased, stood off to the side. The supporter who had led me in quickly positioned himself to Mike's left. Jack, you're also fired as of today, but you've dedicated 10 years to the company, so we'll call it early retirement. You'll get a decent severance package, so don't worry, Mike announced coldly. There was no point in making a scene. I quietly nodded. Understood. Mike mockingly laughed at me. Glad the incompetent is finally gone, he sneered, while his supporters looked down on me smirking. Alice bit her lip in frustration but quickly retaliated. What are you thinking? If Jack leaves, the company really won't be able to function. Shut up. I'm the acting CEO and you're the managing director. If you can't follow my orders, then you should resign too, Mike snapped. Linda, who had been standing to the side, finally spoke up. You're just like Alice now, unable to do anything. You're talented, so why not get hired by another company? Mom, are you saying I'm unnecessary for this company? Alice asked, her voice trembling with disbelief. Oh, you're just realizing that now? This company will be inherited by Mike alone. Don't worry, we'll adequately replace the employees we've lost, Linda said smugly. Are these the words a mother bestows upon her own daughter, to whom she gave life? Once I leave, Mike's takeover will be complete, but I never had the power to stop it in the first place. Watching this family-run business split from the inside is heart-wrenching. I feel sorry for Alice, but I'm exhausted too. Maybe it's better to just resign. Mike, Alice, Linda, I truly appreciate everything you've done for me, I said, bowing my head deeply. When I raised my head, I saw the pale faces of Mike, Linda, and their supporters. Turning around, I was astonished to see Mr. Harrison in a wheelchair, a nurse dressed in plain clothes pushing him. The doctor gave me permission to come out for an hour, Mr. Harrison said. Though he looked thinner, his eyes were sharp, and he radiated energy. Linda staggered toward Mr. Harrison. When did you recover enough to use a wheelchair? She exclaimed. You and Mike never visited, said you wouldn't know, but my condition has been improving day by day, Mr. Harrison replied. Oh, that's good. I've been worried all this time, Linda said, her voice trembling with insincerity. Mr. Harrison snorted and looked away from Linda, turning instead to Mike. I see you've done quite as you please in my absence. Remember, you're only the acting CEO, not the CEO, he stated firmly. Initially, Mike seemed unable to grasp the situation, but as Mr. Harrison spoke with authority, Mike began to tremble. I was just thinking of the company's best interests. I thought you were done for, Mike stammered. You underestimated me. I'm not one to be incapacitated by something like this. My pulse has stabilized and my fever has gone down, Mr. Harrison asserted. That's great. I've been so worried, Mike replied, trying to sound sincere. Mr. Harrison glared at him. Don't say things you don't mean. But fine, it's probably your mother's influence anyway. It's a misunderstanding, dear. I would never put such ideas in Mike's head, Linda protested. I've known you long enough to know better. Anyway, Alice, I'm feeling a bit tired. Could you call an assisted taxi to take me back to the hospital? Mr. Harrison requested. Of course, Dad. I'll have you give orders from your hospital room. I'll be your hands and feet. Alice responded. Thanks to the incredible commotion, my early retirement was called off. Mr. Harrison's recovery was remarkable. He worked hard on rehabilitation to rebuild the muscles that weakened during his hospital stay, and gradually he started walking on his own again. I began visiting the hospital daily with Alice, and each time we saw him, he seemed more energetic. However, it looked like a full recovery would still take some time, so Alice brought a computer into Mr. Harrison's hospital room to make it easier for him to work. With Alice's assistance and my help, Mr. Harrison managed his CEO duties from the hospital room. Despite being 60, Mr. Harrison was quite familiar with computers, so he was pleased to be able to work from his hospital bed. He opened his laptop and turned on the power. Well then, what should we tackle first? Let's restore Harrison Design to its original state, Mr. Harrison suggested. Alice displayed a list of employees who had been fired on the computer screen. It might seem too good to be true to fire them on our own accord and then ask them to come back, but we can't operate without them. I'm prepared to apologize to each of them personally, she said. That's right, I'll join you in apologizing. None of this would have happened if I hadn't fallen ill in the first place, Mr. Harrison agreed. Following Mr. Harrison's instructions, the fired employees were brought back. We all rejoiced at being reunited with smiles. I'm relieved to be reinstated. I was worried about my remaining mortgage, one employee said. That's good to hear. Let's continue to support Mr. Harrison, another added. With this, 90% of the original staff was restored. Unfortunately, we couldn't say it was 100% back to the old company. Now, we just needed to post job openings and bring in new talent. A fresh breeze would surely help the company grow even more. Eventually, Mr. Harrison was discharged and began attending work in a wheelchair. Getting sick is no joke. If you let your guard down, your son might just take over the company, he joked. That's right, Dad. We still need you to be strong. Alice agreed. Mr. Harrison and Alice had a genuinely good relationship full of mutual trust. Unbeknownst to us, the Harrison family had split into two factions, Mr. Harrison and Alice on one side, and Linda and Mike on the other. Sadly, they opposed each other. Linda must have loved Mr. Harrison to have married him, but maybe love between a man and a woman doesn't last forever. As an unmarried man, I had no right to comment, but with most of the employees back, it was time for retribution against those who had betrayed Mr. Harrison. First, both of Mike's supporters were fired. Those two being around made Mike overestimate himself. But the real culprit here was Linda. Mr. Harrison reflected that as time passed in their marriage, they both grew increasingly dissatisfied with each other. Gradually, Linda became overly affectionate toward Mike alone. Mr. Harrison, worried about Mike's carelessness but also showing his form of love, had appointed him as the executive vice president, a position higher than Alice's despite her being older. It seems this act of love didn't quite reach Mike's heart. Other employees who sided with Mike were only given severe warnings. Employees are vulnerable. They have to adapt to whoever is in charge. It was a tough decision for them as well. Mr. Harrison understood this and refrained from demotions or dismissals. The main culprits in this situation were undoubtedly Mike and Linda. For Mr. Harrison, they were his son and wife, but they had to be appropriately punished. Firstly, Mike was demoted to a regular employee for manipulating employees' fates in Mr. Harrison's absence. This personal decision seemed to have hit Mike hard. Having been appointed executive vice president upon joining the company and even using the CEO's office in his father's stead, it must have been unbearable for him. Ashamed of being a regular employee, Mike started coming to the office less frequently. For those of us in management positions, it was actually convenient not to have him around, as it was unclear how to direct him. However, his frequent absences became a concern, so I asked Alice about his home situation. Alice, who lived alone, explained that Mike had always lived with their parents. He's been shut in his room, with the housekeeper leaving his meals in the hallway outside. It's unbelievable, Alice said. He might have lost his confidence all at once, I remarked. However, Linda, who doted on Mike, blamed the turmoil on Mr. Harrison's illness. Their marital relationship seemed irreparably damaged. Both Mr. Harrison and Linda, deeply caring for their children, were living together for their sake, even though it was a struggle. Mr. Harrison decided to punish Linda as well, banning her from entering the company. When Linda complained, Mr. Harrison showed her photos and documents gathered by a detective agency. "You've been having an affair all this time. Did you think I knew nothing about it?" He confronted her. The reason Linda frequently visited Harrison Design was because her lover was there. Her lover was a young employee in his 30s to whom Linda had been generously giving a lot of money. Since Mike became acting CEO, there had even been talks of promoting this man to a managerial position as a special favor. "I had feelings for you after all these years together," Linda tried to explain, but it was too late. The betrayal was clear, and the consequences were inevitable. "But with this incident, even that's gone. The money you squandered was earned through my hard work," Mr. Harrison lamented. Linda desperately made excuses, but Mr. Harrison was not willing to listen. As the CEO's wife, her attempts to privatize the company were a serious offense. Mr. Harrison and Linda ended up getting a late-life divorce. However, Linda's lover quickly submitted his resignation and returned to his hometown. Mike, who adored Linda, vehemently opposed the divorce. "It's unfair to Mom. How is she supposed to live if they divorce now? She should just work or do something. It's normal to work to live. You should try working for a change," Mr. Harrison responded. Eventually, Mr. Harrison fired Mike, who showed no inclination to work at all. Thus, Mike and Linda were both ousted from the house. Normally, a young and able son like Mike would work and support Linda. However, Mike just couldn't seem to get a job. Having been pampered as the executive vice president and acting CEO, his pride wouldn't allow him to work under someone else. As a result, their finances dwindled, and mother and son, with nowhere else to go, reluctantly returned to Linda's family home in the countryside. However, the house had passed on to Linda's brother and his wife. Knowing their plight, they couldn't turn them away, so they were given a small room and lived there in constrained circumstances. As for those of us who remained at Harrison Design, Mr. Harrison fully recovered and no longer needed a wheelchair, though he used a cane just to be safe. But he walked firmly on his own feet. With the CEO's full return, the company regained its normalcy. I was promoted to head of the sales department in the next personnel change. The responsibility was greater, but with Mr. Harrison's trust and the support of my subordinates, I found my work fulfilling. Alice became the executive vice president, serving as an excellent confidant and advisor to Mr. Harrison. I should have appointed Alice as the executive vice president from the beginning. Then this chaotic incident would never have happened, Mr. Harrison said. "I understand you wanted to give Mike a chance, Dad, but it's good we realized early on that he wasn't capable," replied Alice. "They say the more troublesome a child is, the dearer they are. Mike was a perfect example of that." Mr. Harrison deeply regretted appointing Mike, who lacked the ability, to the executive vice president position out of paternal affection. Thus, Harrison Design managed to recover from a significant crisis. The company's performance improved and employee wages increased. We, the employees, are now more motivated than ever to rally under Mr. Harrison's leadership and build up the company. One day during lunch break, I was Mr. Harrison's chess partner in his office, just like before the hospital incident. Our skills were evenly matched, leading to wins and losses for both of us. Mr. Harrison seemed to enjoy this aspect of the game. "Like in business, Jack, it's no fun if you go easy on me," he said. "That's true, I completely understand," I replied. Mr. Harrison became silent for a while. Just when I thought he was focusing on the chessboard, he said something unexpected. "Jack, aren't you going to get married? You're at a good age for it." I was a bit embarrassed. I've been so caught up in work that I haven't had a girlfriend. But you're right. I should start thinking about that aspect of my life. I may not have much credibility in giving marriage advice, considering how mine turned out, but maybe it's time you thought about settling down. Maybe I should start attending mixers then, I joked. Just then, Alice entered the room with a knock. "Oh, playing chess again. You two always get along so well." "The only one who plays with me is Jack," Mr. Harrison replied. Alice casually took a seat next to me, watching our match with interest. "Jack, teach me chess too. I want to study and beat Dad someday." "That's a great idea. Playing against me all the time must be boring for Mr. Harrison." Mr. Harrison looked back and forth between me and Alice, grinning. "How about it? Shall the three of us go out for sushi tonight?" "That sounds lovely." "Jack, are you free?" Alice asked. "I don't mind at all. I'd be happy to join." Lately, it seems we've been spending more time together like this. For me, it's the most comfortable and pleasant relationship. I was just telling Jack it's about time he thought about getting married. Alice, the same goes for you. Don't stay single forever. I want to see my grandchildren. Well, I do feel a bit rushed thinking about childbirth, but I don't have anyone in mind. Maybe I should go to Mixers, Alice replied with a smile. I laughed. I was just saying the same thing, Alice. Shall we go to a mixer together next time? Oh, that would be nice. Make sure there are some handsome guys. Maybe it would be quicker if you two got married, Mr. Harrison teased. Alice and I exchanged glances and laughed. I'd be lying if I said I hadn't thought about her in that way, but I felt I still lacked the credentials to ask her out. Looking at Alice beside me, she seemed to blush with embarrassment. I vaguely thought about asking her out for drinks, just the two of us.